Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this is Fluffles. Some of you may have watched the Spitfire diorama I did, the beer delivery Spitfire. And as part of that diorama set, I used Airfix's World War II ground crew set. And part of that set is this dog. My daughter saw the dog, promptly decided it was named Fluffles, and said that it was to go on a diorama of his own. I think she wants him as some kind of a pet. So yeah, so this is Fluffles, everyone, and today we're going to make a little diorama for him to go on. So let's get on with it. So to build the base of the diorama, I'm going to use this. This is a piece of tree, as you can see, which came from a local tree surgeon. They were cutting some trees down and I snagged a few pieces. This has been sitting in the workshop drying out for quite some time, so it's nice and dry now. I've cleaned it up a bit, but not too much. I wanted to keep it kind of rough and ready. It was cut with a chainsaw, as you can see, so it's not the smoothest cuts in the world, but I'm not overly concerned about that because we're going to cover it. I was going to try and, because you can see it's kind of wedge shaped, and originally I was going to cut it so it was flat. But I think what I'm actually going to do, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, there's going to be quite a lot of firsts in this video. I'm going to try and I'm going to make a little scene here. So I'm going to have like a tree or something at the back, so we'll have to make a tree and some ground cover. And what I thought I might do is have it sloping down and maybe have a little bit of a water feature at the bottom here. So we'll have a go at that and see how well that comes out. I do a lot of work with resin, but I've never done anything like on a diorama before, so it should be interesting. So the first thing we need to do is make up a batch of mix to cover the ground. So that's what we'll do next. So what I've got is this. This is modelling paste. It came from eBay. It wasn't very expensive. You can get really expensive modelling paste, but this is just cheap stuff. So we're going to get some of this. I'm going to mix a bit of colour with it. This is sap green. I've had this for years. I'd rather use a brown, but I'm going to use this green because basically I've had it for years and I've never used it. So we'll use some of this. And then to give it some texture, I'm going to use this. Now this is Schwartz mixed herbs. But if you can see in there, it actually looks a lot like leaf litter. So we're going to use this, and also this. This is Italian seasoning. But again, if you look at that, because this one's got, where is it? This one's got rosemary in it, and so it ends up looking a lot like twigs and leaves and scatter and so on. So we're going to mix these two together and add some of the modelling paste and a little bit of colour, mix it all up, and that'll be our base material. So I'm going to mix it in this little pot first, just so I can keep any that's left over. But if you look at that, I mean, that looks perfect for leaf litter, doesn't it? So we'll put a bit of that in. Smells nice too. Try not to spill it everywhere. And this as well, so it looks great. So we'll put a bit of that in as well and mix that up. And we'll put the lid on. Oh, he says, I'm not putting the lid on. Give it a shake. And there we go, you see. Now that looks a lot like leaf litter to me. So now we mix it with the other ingredients. Now what I've got here is a paintbrush or artist pack from the works, £6. I bought it mainly for the brushes because it's got 25 brushes in it, but it's also got these palette knives, so we can use these to mix it all up. I think I'm going to put a bit of brown in that as well to darken it down a bit. You don't need to put the colour in because we're going to paint over it, but it's basically, the idea is that if it ever gets chipped or damaged or anything like that, you won't leave like a big white patch. So now we can start putting this on here. Now we just need to leave that to dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to start working on the tree. Now I've got here a piece of an actual tree. I'm not quite sure what sort of tree it is, unfortunately, because it's really good. But it looks already very much like a tree, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of this off and make it a little bit more tree-like. And to help with that, I bought these. These are seafoam grass. Everybody uses this stuff. I've never used it before, but it certainly does look the part. And so I thought I would get some and see what it comes out like. It is quite expensive to buy, but I think the way you make it go further is to snip bits off and stick them onto the other bit. But we'll give it a go and see what happens. So I've just snipped the end off with a pair of side cutters, and what I'm going to do now is clean it up with a razor saw so we've got a nice edge. Now it needs to kind of sit like that, so I'm going to cut it at a bit of an angle because obviously our base is slightly angled and I want it to sit straight. So I'm just going to cut it at a slight bevel so that it will sit so it's coming straight up out of the base. And now what I'll do is I'll drill a hole in the end of this and put a pin in so that we can attach it to the base. And for the pin I'm going to use a piece of paper clip. So I'll just straighten that out. Now we can super glue that into the base. And now not only will that give us a way to attach it to the base, it also means we can stand it on something and hold it when we're putting the rest of the finish on. Okay, so what I've got, oh, by the way, apologies for the noise in the background, the 3D printer's running. What I've got here is some seafoam grass that I bought, and what I'm going to do is use some bits of this to add some structure to the tree. So basically what I'm going to do is take little bits off and stick them on the branches to make it a bit more twiggy. So that's next. Right, so there's our tree. I'll wait for the glue to set up completely, then I'll mist over it with some paint and then stick some leaves and things to it. Okay, so what I've got here is a little bit of PVA in a pot. And I've also got this. This is, as it says, it's green tea. So this is, basically I bought a bunch of cheap green tea bags, cut them open and took the tea out. And I'm going to use these as leaves. Well, because they are tea leaves. So I'm going to, basically I've got to be very careful with this because this is quite delicate, this sea foam. But I'm just going to get some glue on the brush and just gently dab it on. I don't want it to be like covered in leaves, I just want a few. It's almost like a you know, an autumn thing where the leaves are mainly fallen, there's just a few left. So I just dab some PVA on. Like that. Now, take our green tea and just scatter it on like that. And the idea is it will stick to where the glue is and not stick anywhere else. And there we go. Now we've just got a few leaves on there. I think that's quite nice. I'm quite pleased with that. So what we'll do is leave this now to dry, and then we can finish the tree off. So what I'm going to do now, while the tree's drying, is I'm going to put some colour on the base. So what I've got here is some acrylic paints in this little palette. That's raw umber, burnt umber, and yellow ochre. And I'm going to mix all three, a fairly thin mix, and then put them on all over just to give us a bit more variety on the base. This is just water. So I'll just mix these up. And I'm going to put a drop of isopropyl alcohol in just to act as a flow improver, just to break the surface tension of the water. notice I put masking tape on the sides of the base. Basically I want to try and avoid getting too much paint on the side, because I'm going to leave the bark of the wood so that it looks natural, so I don't really want to get paint all over it, or if I can avoid it. So as you can see, it's going on almost like a wash, and it just breaks it up a little bit and makes it a bit more interesting. Because this, the bottom part here, this is where hopefully I'm going to do the water, so I want to make this look a bit more muddy. So while this is still wet, I'm going to add some more of our herb mix. So this is the mixed herbs and the Italian seasoning, and I'm just going to sprinkle some more of this on the top. Not a massive amount, but just enough to give it a bit of interest. And I'm going to avoid going over the bottom too much, because again I want that to be our little water feature. And what I've got here are some stones. These have basically come from gravel, from driveways and things, but these stones are quite rounded. I sorted them by hand, and they're quite rounded, so they look like they've been like tossed around in a river and stuff. So I'm going to put a couple of those at the bottom just to add a bit of interest. So again, I've got a little bit of PVA here in this pot, and I'll just take some of these stones, only a couple, and just put them in the glue and just put them on like that. Maybe not that one. And here I've got some sand just from the beach, but you can get this from anywhere. Doesn't have to be beach sand, it's just sand. And I'll sprinkle some of that on as well. Again, doesn't need a lot, it's just to give it a bit of texture. There we go. Now we can take some of our scenery glue and just drop this on, and that will hold everything in place. And one final little bit, this is Woodland Scenic's blended turf. I'm going to put a little touch of this on, just to sort of tie everything together. So I've just put some in a little pot here because it's a bit easier to deal with. So not a lot, just a little bit, just to kind of tie everything in, and it kind of makes it look kind of mossy. There we go. Now we just leave this to dry, and then we can get on with it again once it's all set up. Right, that's all nicely dry now. I've just drilled a little hole up here at the top because I'm going to attach the tree. So that will go like that. And I want to attach it with a bit of just a little splodge of Mod Podge. Splodge of Mod Podge? And then we'll disguise the join. So what I've got here is this is actual leaf litter. These are leaves that I collected, left them in the airing cupboard to dry out, and then blitzed them in a food processor. So I'll put some of these around the bottom of the tree to hide the join. And I'll just put a few just randomly across the... And now we get our terrain glue again, our scenery glue. And again, we just leave that to dry. Okay, so this is dry now. So the next major step is going to be putting the water on. But before I do that, I want to give the whole thing a coat of matte varnish, just to seal and protect everything we've done so far, because I don't want to spray the varnish once the resin is on, because I want the resin, you know, shiny for the water. I want it to stay glossy. So we'll seal everything now with a matte varnish, and then after that we can think about putting the water effects on. Right, so I've just masked off the front of the diorama so that I can put the resin in. Now this is going to be interesting because I don't know how well this is going to work, but we'll give it a go and we'll see what happens. I've got the resin just warming up here in this little heater. It's very cold here in the workshop and the resin has basically gone like glue. So I'm just warming up to thin it a little bit. Then I'm going to add a bit of pigment to it, and then I'm going to put it in and we'll see what happens. So, wish me luck. So I'm going to tint the resin now. I've got this Tamiya clear green. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of this in just to give it a little bit of a green tint. When you're adding any kind of pigment to a resin, really only add the tiniest amount. Now you see that's one drop, and you watch what happens when I mix that in. Because you can always add more, but you can't take it back out. Yeah, you see people like blob it in and then it just goes opaque and it's no good. So what I'm going to do now is add a drop of blue as well, just to change the colour slightly. This is the hardener for the resin. It's pretty nasty stuff. It's butanone peroxide. You do not want to spill this stuff. It will eat through anything. So I normally keep it in this little squeezy bottle, and we just add it 1, 2. when you start mixing it, you'll see it will kind of go cloudy. And you just keep mixing it until it goes clear again. But mix it slowly because we don't want to get any air bubbles in it, or as few as possible. Just keep mixing it. Make sure you scrape round the sides, scrape the bottom, because you want to get it thoroughly mixed, because if there's any pockets that don't get enough hardener, they'll never ever cure, and it will just stay tacky and sticky and horrible forever. So make sure you give it a good stir. The pot life on this is about 15 minutes, I think. So there's plenty of time to give it a good stir. You can see there's quite a lot of little air bubbles in there. I'm not really worried about that because of what we're doing. It's not really that important because they will rise to the surface and pop on their own. And also it's water, so if there's any air bubbles in it, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. Now you see that's gone clear again. So we just mix it for another minute or so and then we'll put it in. Right, that'll do us. So I'm just going to put that back in the water for a minute, in the warm water, just to keep it warm. And now we need to put it in here. So I've made sure that the tape is stuck down all the way around. I'm really hoping this is going to work because it could end up being a disaster, but we'll see. Right. I think that will do us. So what I'm doing now is just teasing the edges a little bit because I don't want, because obviously this is quite thick, there's a lot of surface tension. So what I want to do is just get rid of any like lumps at the side, as it were, so it's laying nice and flat. And that seems to be going alright. Doesn't appear to be leaking anywhere. So what we've got to do now is leave it to dry. One other little tip, as you can see there's quite a lot of resin left in this pot. So what I'm going to do is just pour it into this mould. This is the mould I made of some boxes and things that I made a long time ago. And I find it's handy, if you've got resin left over, keep a mould handy that you can just put the resin in so you don't waste it. So I'll just fill this mould up as well. Actually, there's one extra thing I'm going to do while this resin is still wet. I'm just going to drop a few bits of this leaf litter in just to let it sit in the water. Now I'm just using a cocktail stick to push it into the resin. What I've got here are some leaves that I made using a leaf punch. So I'm going to drop a few of those in as well. I'll try and put these in individually if I can. got to be careful because I've warmed this resin up, it's starting to gel already. And last but not least, some of our green tea leaves that we use to make the leaves on the tree itself. What I'm doing here is I'm kind of building them up a little bit along the bank where the water meets the bank, because that's where the water would naturally push the leaves and they would accumulate. So I'll just sprinkle them on like this, and then when it's all dry, any loose ones I can just blow off. And that'll do us. Now we can leave it to cure. Okay, so this has had a few days to dry now. So now is the moment of truth. I'm going to try and peel off the tape and see what happens. Drop the load. Now it seems that there are a couple of spots where, I don't know if you can see that very well, where it's still kind of tacky. I don't know if it's had a reaction to the adhesive on the tape. It's possible. But the point is it's dried and the tape's come off okay. And what I can do is I'll leave it for a few more days and see if it actually cures completely. But it has cured, so, and you know, I can whatever happens with this, I can fix it. So that's not a problem. So I'm quite pleased with how it's come out. What I want to do now is, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, I bought these, it's a pack of tufts that I got from eBay for a few quid. I do make my own, you know, grass tufts and things like that, but I saw this pack and it was greatly reduced and I thought I'd give it a go. But there's a lot of tufts in here with like flowers and things on, and I thought it might be interesting to try putting a tuft or two on here and see what they look like. So I'll have a little rummage through the box and find a suitable one, and we'll stick it on and see what happens. Well, there's quite a selection here, as you can see. I think what I'm going to do is there are these tufts here, and I think I'm going to use one of those and put it near the water's edge, kind of like reeds. And what I've got here is an old paintbrush, and I'm going to cut a couple of bristles off and stick them in to look like reeds. So I'll do that, and then I think I'll pick one of the other like flowery ones and put it somewhere else just for a splash of colour. So let's try and pick one off and see what happens. I'm just going to cut a few of these bristles off. This is Mod Podge matte, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there, like that. And now, I don't know whether this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. Well, that seems to stand up all right. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I'll pick one of the flowery ones and put it somewhere else. Right, and I'm just going to stick this one over here by the rock. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I've peeled the rest of the masking tape off just to see what it looks like, and it actually looks pretty good. So there's the bristle stuck in. I'm just going to put a drop of scenery glue on it just to make sure it's all held in place. And then it's just a case of sorting out this edge here, but which I think has actually come out a lot better than I thought it was going to. So I think we'll be alright with that. So let's put a drop of scenery glue on there. And when that dries, that'll make sure those reeds don't come out. And then all we've got left to do is put the dog on. Right, so here's Fluffles. Let's just figure out where he's going to go. Drop the wall. Drill a little hole in the base, which is going to be interesting. And there he is. I think I've knocked one of the branches off the tree. Never mind, I'll stick that back on. And right, there's Fluffles on his base, looking quite happy. So yeah, I think that's come out alright. And here is the finished article. I'm very pleased with how this has turned out. I've not really done anything like this for a very long time, and certainly not using these kind of construction techniques, as it were. The trees come out really nice. I'm very happy with that. The water effects have worked quite well, which I'm happy with. This is basically in preparation for another diorama that I'm going to do, and I just wanted to try a few things out, and it's all worked out very well. So Fluffles looks happy with his new home, and I think my daughter's going to be very pleased with it. So yeah, there's Fluffles in his romping around under the trees. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's certainly been interesting and informative for me. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers. Bye.